You are sitting on your couch. Your dog is staring at you. You think he is simple. He wants food. He wants a walk. You think you are the master. But in 2017, 27 dogs at the University of Zurich proved something terrifying. Researchers put them in a room with two humans. One human shared a sausage. The other human kept it. The dogs figured this out immediately. Then the selfish human asked the dog for help finding hidden food. The dogs did not just ignore him. They deliberately lied. They walked the greedy person directly to an empty box every single time. They hid the real sausage for the human who actually shared. They did not just learn a trick, they judged human character. Now take your own life. You smile at a stranger. You hide your frustration at work. You think your inner motives are private, but the animal at your feet is not looking at your smile. It is actively decoding the invisible chemical markers of your hidden deception. This sounds impossible. It isn't. In 2021, a researcher named Lucrezia Leonardo at the University of Veterinary Medicine, Vienna, tested 260 dogs. She wanted to map the boundaries of animal trust. A human pointed to a hidden bucket of food. Sometimes the human was genuinely confused. They pointed to the wrong spot because they honestly thought the food was there. The dogs followed the pointing finger. They forgave the honest error. But then the experiment changed. The human watched the food being hidden. They knew exactly where it was. And then they intentionally pointed to the wrong bucket to deceive the dog. The dogs stopped. They stared at the human. They refused to follow the gesture. They knew the human was lying. They recognized the intent to deceive. For context, human children struggle to do this until they are about 4 years old. Your dog is doing it instinctively. And yet, the most fascinating evidence comes from something that shouldn't exist: pure malice. In 2021, Dr. Julianne Brouwer at the Max Planck Institute put 51 dogs behind a glass wall. A human tried to pass them a treat through a small gap. First, the human accidentally dropped it. The dogs were patient. They understood clumsiness. They waited. Then, the human deliberately pulled the treat away, teasing them, mocking them. The dogs immediately changed their behavior. They stopped trying to reach through the glass. They sat down. They turned away. They punished the bad intention with absolute crushing ignorance. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about the ancient bond between humans and animals. You think you domesticated them, but they spent 30,000 years studying you. They learned to read the one thing you cannot fake: your breath. Every time you feel fear, your adrenal glands flood your bloodstream. Every time you feel deep shame, your body pumps out cortisol. These internal human emotions do not stay inside your body. They become volatile organic compounds. They exit through your lungs. They float into the air around you. In 2024, a researcher named Laura Kuroja at Dalhousie University proved exactly how terrifying this biological broadcast really is. She took breath samples from 26 humans. Some were experiencing severe trauma flashbacks. She introduced these invisible chemical clouds to two specific dogs named Ivy and Callie. The dogs did not just smell vague stress. They chemically separated the exact human emotions. Ivy reacted specifically to the adrenaline axis. She smelled pure fear. Callie ignored the fear entirely. She reacted exclusively to the cortisol axis. She smelled human shame. They achieved 90% accuracy. The dogs were literally inhaling the invisible molecular footprint of human suffering. Now, some of you are thinking, so every dog is a magical empath who feels my pain? That assumption turned out to be wrong. Very wrong. The reality of animal cognition is much darker and much more selective, because out of 25 family dogs tested for this exact trauma response, 23 completely failed. They lacked the cognitive stamina. They simply did not care enough to decode the human chemical puzzle. Only Ivy and Callie succeeded. You project human morality onto your pets. You assume they love you unconditionally, but some of them are just observing you, weighing your actions, smelling your adrenaline, and deciding whether you are actually worth cooperating with. So the question isn't whether animals can read your mind. The question is what they do with that information when they realize you are a threat. Because the 23 dogs that failed the breath test in 2024 did not fail because they lacked a sense of smell. They failed because calculating human baggage is exhausting. The two dogs that succeeded, Ivy and Callie, were performing an act of interspecies translation that requires massive cognitive endurance. And this is where the dynamic between you and your pet completely flips. Let us go back to Dr. Juliana Brouwer at the Max Planck Institute in 2021. Remember the glass wall. When the human accidentally dropped the treat, the dogs did not just wait. They actively problem-solved. They walked all the way around the physical glass barrier to retrieve the food themselves. They saw human incompetence and decided to take over the mission. But when the human pulled the food away intentionally, the dogs did something entirely different. They refused to walk around the barrier. They stayed put. They did not exert a single calorie of extra effort. They calculated that a human with bad intentions is a dead end. They punished malice with absolute withdrawal. This sounds like a simple reaction. It isn't. It is a highly tuned evolutionary defense mechanism. For context, you probably spend half your day navigating office politics, trying to figure out who is actually on your side and who is just using you. Your dog does this in 3 seconds. And they do not just observe your bad intentions, they actively manipulate them. When Marianne Heberlein ran her 2017 study at the University of Zurich with the 27 dogs, the setup was not just about finding a sausage. There were 3 distinct boxes: one empty box, one box with boring dry kibble, and one box with a high-value sausage. The dogs did not just blindly lead the selfish human away from the meat. They deliberately guided the bad actor to the completely empty box. They ensured the selfish human got absolutely nothing. Then, they waited for the cooperative human to return so they could split the premium reward. They ran a complex economic cost-benefit analysis on human selfishness. They weaponized their own obedience to secure a better future. This is tactical deception. You think you are training them to sit and stay? They are training you to reveal your true character. Now, some of you are thinking, but dogs are genetically engineered to love us. Fair question, and the answer comes from history. You imagine ancient humans sitting around a fire, tossing scraps to a grateful wolf. You assume the wolf was just happy to be included, but that wolf was making a calculated risk assessment. For 30,000 years, living next to a human was the most dangerous thing an animal could do. We are erratic, we are violent, we deceive each other constantly. To survive next to us, early dogs had to develop an incredibly sophisticated alarm system for human malice. They had to know the exact difference between a human who tripped and a human who was preparing to strike. Necessity did not invent this emotional radar. Survival did. Which brings us right back to you. Modern psychology has a term for what you do every single day. They call it masking. You walk through your front door after a terrible day at work. You are completely exhausted. You fake a smile for your family. You push your frustration down into your stomach. You think your internal emotional state is your own private business. You think the animal greeting you at the door is just happy you are home. But they are not just looking at the shape of your smile. They are inhaling the volatile organic compounds of your hidden stress. They are checking your adrenaline axis for fear. They are checking your cortisol axis for shame. They are comparing the fake posture of your body to the harsh chemical reality floating in your lungs. You spend your entire life hiding your true intentions from other humans. You sleep in one room and call your hidden anxieties your own private burden. They sleep at the foot of your bed and read your biochemistry like a billboard. You judge animals by how well they obey. They judge you by how well you tell the truth. You are not the master of the house. You are just the subject of the oldest psychological study in history, and they already know exactly who you are.